Well, welcome to Minhag Dirigo, a Jewish Maine podcast. Joining me again this week for our multi-part series on Christian-Jewish relations is my beloved brother, Pastor Kevin Kresge of Lancaster in Pennsylvania, because this is a Maine podcast.
Yeah.
So let's get medieval. Tonight
Yes.
is the medieval period. So just as a fun tidbit, and Kevin, when he logged on to our Zoom tonight, heard me say Pink Pony Club. And so I was Googling for bumper music with a medieval theme. And I learned that bardcore exists. There is a thing called bardcore. And this
That is
is where
amazing.
they take modern songs and put them to like medieval style. And I urge everyone to Google the bardcore versions of Jolene and Pink Pony Club.
Okay.
which and that will be our bumper music for this week, arranged and recorded by Hildegard von Blingen. So it was a lot of fun, and I learned things. But so yeah, let's get medieval. 10th to 17th centuries.
Yes.
Very, very interesting time period in both Jewish and Christian history. Very definitive in for both of our faiths. Kevin, I could start. I know it wasn't in the prep questions, but I know that you can answer this eloquently right off the top of your head.
I hope.
What would be like if you could pick three key things for Christianity in the medieval period that moved the needle in Christianity by your estimation? What do you think those things would be?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, without a doubt, the formation of the Anglican Church, which, I think we were briefly kind of talking about that. So Henry VIII. So there we're talking, mid 15th century, into the 16th century, with, and then into even further with Elizabeth and Mary. So the split of the Catholic and Protestant Church, huge. And that is absolutely, I would say, probably the first of them. After that, it would be probably some of the, probably some of the councils that were held, like within the church, in terms of like in terms of the Catholic Church. Because they still, like, despite even the separation of the church, would be huge. And then, of course, the Inquisition is another one that, but I mean, man, geez, how do we ignore the Crusades?
Yeah. Right.
It's I mean, there's no shortage of massive events that the church is involved in this time period. But I mean, I would say one of the largest for sure, because I mean, simply because the formation of the Anglican Church ends up resulting in the founding of the United States. So I would say that that's a big one. So I mean, that I would pick that one as like top, and then certainly the Crusades is one. At least the first Crusade. Second, not maybe as much, but it still plays a role nonetheless. But then Spanish Inquisition maybe would probably be third.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects. I love that we're so on the same page with humor. It makes everything so easy.
Yeah. It's funny on the Jewish side, I would say that arguably it was one of the most prolific periods for rabbis, which is kind of counterintuitive given all the bad that happened during the medieval period in the Middle Ages. We had two eras of rabbis contained there in the Geonim. These were kind of like the the Talmudic academies in Babylonia during one of the caliphates. So it was like the pinnacle of Jewish thought. And then they were followed probably from the 11th to the 15th centuries by the Rishonim. And these were guys, these were, and I say guys because it was a sausage party of rabbis. But these were the ones that led to the writing of the Shulchan Aruch, which is kind of what defined Judaism to follow in our defines so much of this today. More of Judaism was defined in, I would argue, in the Middle Ages that travels to how we observe and live today, because it also set the stage for the Jewish Reformation. Reform Judaism came out of this. Haskalah, which led to Reform Judaism, came out of Moses Mendelssohn and these folks and Martin Buber. And all of these guys, of course, were influenced by what was going on in the Protestant world, too. I mean, we were inextricably linked. So, in so many different ways. So this was also the time period that gave birth to commentators. Our preeminent Torah commentator, Rashi, who was a French Talmudist, and the Rambam, Moses ben Maimon Maimonides, and Nachmanides. So in Spain and the Holy Land and such. And it was so it was a really prolific period for us too. And what with what we'll talk about tonight, what I'd like to emphasize is that it wasn't all bad, because if it was all bad, there's some really bad shit stuff that happened back then, like the Crusades, obviously, and we'll get into that. But this was also there was a lot of like talk, dialogue, cross polemics, and
Mm.
it was it wasn't just the Inquisition. It wasn't just Crusades. It was that and more. And unfortunately, I think the negativity tends to be right, perhaps rightly focused upon for everybody. But I mean, there was a lot of good that came out. We flourished. I think we both flourished intellectually and spiritually, our faiths out of this time period. Um, and because it was foundational for a lot of what came next. So as we talk about this stuff tonight, I don't want any listeners to feel like, oh crap, everything was horrible. But yeah, but no.
Yeah. I'm actually going to amend my previous answer
Oh yeah.
to that. Yeah. I'm gonna pull the Spanish Inquisition. And because I forgot that 1611 existed, and that was the publication of the King James Bible.
Oh
So
yeah.
though it is a spin-off of my number one answer, uh, I might actually say King James Bible number one, split of the church number two, and then Crusades number three. I think would actually be, because that takes the scriptures and moves them out of the Textus Receptus and puts it into um, you know the common language.
Yeah, and that's a
So
really important point, because this is also the time period, yeah, when the press came, and
yeah,
when both of our religions stopped being exclusively the province of the enlightened
of the
few.
scholar, yeah,
Yeah, and was accessible suddenly. Now, I mean, your mileage may vary on that, but
yeah,
it's certainly the beginning of a trend. I mean, today, both of us can go on and get like significant bodies of our works going back uh, far beyond the medieval pages, as far as to prehistory practically, and there's we can get it online, the translations of things, and it's an exciting time to me to be a theologian, just because of what we can get at. But I imagine what an explosion back then too.
hmm Oh
So
yeah. I mean, and that was like a hugely illegal thing too. Like that was, you know, yeah, that definitely shook things up.
it was so fascinating. It was so hit or miss. Jumping into our first topic here. Jewish rights were granted by Theodosian, and the
Yep.
Justinian codes were removed. But Judaism still could be outlawed. Baptisms could be forced. The Fourth Lateran Council of 1215. Like I'm reading this, I don't want anybody to think I know this just off the top of my head.
Right.
That addressed the position of Jews in Christendom. Like we couldn't be in public during Easter. in certain areas, Jews and Muslims were required to wear distinctive dress in some
Yep.
Christian controlled areas, which curiously, if you see how a lot of Hasidic or Haredi Jews dress today, a lot of that is a vestige of those garment, uh, state mandated garment choices. One of the reasons why I still wear my fedora, but that's more Indiana Jones than Chabad, but it's, um, but I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and
where that comes from.
I don't know what the actual geographic breakup, because I mean some of those restrictions and enforcements were regional.
Yeah. Pointy
So I
hats.
don't know what, yeah, I don't know what the actual like geographic breakup of like what some of the more stringent restrictions or rules were, like
Yeah.
what areas, but yeah, I mean it certainly wasn't uniform, but I mean there was uniformity, but only at the base level.
Yeah.
Uh, Still not great, um, but also yeah, the especially the like the dress, like the enforced dress stuff was kind of regional as I understood it, based on the reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this time period is also the origin of the blood libel, which, if people aren't
Hmm.
familiar with that, it is that Jews use the blood of Gentile children in our Passover matzah. And I mean, as much as I try to avoid the modern corollaries, there are a lot of the modern blood libel manifests today in accusations of genocide in Gaza, uh,
Yep.
accusations that we're harvesting Palestinian organs and all these other horrible things. It all goes back to that medieval period, along with accusations that we were the cause of the Black Death. Um, and interestingly, the accusations of the like our us being responsible for the Black Death were actually born of our purity rituals. They, they weren't a complete panacea. We got, Jews got the Black Death and died, the bubonic plague and died too, chronic bubonic. But the it was the cleanliness habits, the hand washing, the prescribed hand washing rituals, the visits to the mikveh that helped prevent the spread of the Black Death amongst the Jewish communities. And of course, if you're not suffering from the same thing that the other peasants are, you must be the cause, right? So, and then
Yeah,
it was also
couldn't have anything to do with being clean.
right. Yeah, it's like and it's also the First Crusade, which that the Rhineland massacres probably set the stage ultimately for the Holocaust. It's definitely the seeds of the genocidal bent towards Jews in Europe were planted with you know the massacres all up and down the Rhineland by the Crusaders, like from Trier to Mainz and other places. I'm probably pronouncing those wrong, but it's not, again, it's not all bad. There were so many positive interactions. Emperor Frederick II and Pope Innocent the Fourth denied that Jews used human blood. They outwardly said the blood libel was a lie.
Hmm.
Uh, and of course, it continued. The mob still does its own thing, and individual parishes probably did their own thing. But Pope Clement the Sixth, he tried to get cities to protect Jews. He
Yep.
issued a papal bull that said Christians should not attack Jews or steal their property. So
Exactly.
I mean, it's hard because you see that today. There is no religious authority, at least in the Christian world, a legitimate that would ever say that it's okay to harm any minority religion for that matter. The mob does what the mob does, but I don't. I think it's true then. It's true now. The institutions aren't in on this, so I'd hope. I don't know, but I guess the first question I pose to you tonight, like for reals, is to your mind, knowing that we've talked in previous episodes about your disgust with the supposed Christian figures who say the horrible things, I feel like I just say, I feel like, especially since October 7th, 2023, I feel like some of my best friends as a Jew in America are Christian clergy. So I, the people that have rallied to us in ways that are meaningful tend to be religious themselves in a Christian paradigm. And I it's a lot of gratitude. And that includes you and dad. And for our listeners, our father is also a Methodist minister. So it's, I guess the question I'd ask is you, based on what you've seen of anti-Semitism up there, how much power do organized churches, do you think, have to fight uh, people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson,
Mm,
or their equivalent on the left, like you know the left wing anti-Semites that are semi-religious, and
yeah.
would you,
Um,
yeah, do you think the church has
well,
any
and
power?
I would hope that the church does. The problem is that, boy, oh wow,
Yeah,
that is a tough one, and because from where I sit on, I guess, on the conservative right, sort of, um, we're disavowing Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens because, for lack of a better term, batshit crazy,
yeah,
um, is quite fitting. Um, I mean, I don't know how many different ways somebody needs to spell out and be blatantly wrong before people stop believing them. So what I'm seeing is there's a lot of folks on the right that are like, these people are nuts and they're moving away from it. Yet at the same time, I see plenty of people on the right who are also almost using that as a permission slip for open anti-Semitism, and it's horrifying. Um, and then, like as you said, like there's prominent figures on the left as well. Um, like I see people within, so coming from within the United Methodist tradition. Just in 2016, we had a resolution that we passed in our book of resolutions that was pretty striking in terms of establishing a foundation for Christian-Jewish relations. Um, and then we immediately, within just a few years, managed to effectively nullify it with actions within the denomination by joining into the BDS movement. And, um, if you look at communications today, you see us, and I don't even like saying us, you see the denomination openly decrying the genocide and, pardon the snark, taking place in Gaza, because I don't think anybody really even knows what the meaning of genocide is anymore.
no,
Um, you know, but there are people, but regardless of side, what I'm seeing is it's almost like an unfettered uh, desire to express these anti-Jewish thoughts. The people are like rolling out all the old tropes and making jokes like, people got the phone call and this and that and the other thing, and it's like it's really kind of disgusting when I don't know people that believe that, and then the ones that surprise me is when I hear someone break that out, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, did you really just say that? And so it's almost like it's almost like this slow rollout of anti-Semitism across the board, regardless of political or religious ideology. Um, and we're just kind of, as it seems to become more permissible in society, it's shocking, really, the number of people who are like openly becoming like outspokenly anti-Semitic, and it's really disturbing. Bringing that back to the Methodist thing, you know, we've got this great statement, and I share it. If you look in like our guiding principles, um, I could share like it's from our resolutions, resolution number 3292, and you can go through this. And it's this amazing thing. It's like all these bullet points, like Judaism and Christianity are living in dynamic religious movements that have continued to evolve since the time of Jesus, often in interaction with each other. There's stuff in here about the history, like that we're talking about tonight. Um, but like the shared history that the covenants are eternal and irrevocable and are everlasting. That stuff that we've talked about in previous episodes.
Yeah.
And yet now the same leaders that helped prove this are already doing things that fly in the face of these words. So it's almost like this was a great show, and now it's like, okay, well now all the true feelings are like of the people behind this are starting to come out.
It's, what's hard for people like us, and I consider you in the same boat because you and I share the same matrilineal heritage here, and
Hmm.
it affects you too. They are your people as much as they're mine,
Yeah,
and one of the frustrations that I have is that you're talking about now half of the world's Jewish population is concentrated in the Levant, and whatever goes happen in Gaza. And there's a margin for things to say. I just because I don't believe that it was genocide, just because I know it's not genocide, doesn't mean that war crimes weren't committed. But what
right.
people don't know about war crimes is that war crimes happen in war.
Hmm.
People would be shocked at how many war crime we don't, just like Israel, the United States doesn't submit itself to the International Court of Justice for good reason. Um, but the
Well,
prosecutions,
when the inmates are running the asylum,
yeah,
you
and
tend to not do that.
right, but we are very, just like Israel, we're very aggressive about prosecuting war crimes
Oh,
to
and
take in our own
for clarity's
forces.
sake, when I say this, for clarity's sake, I'm referring to the fact that nation states like Iran and China and others are on that council that run the Human Rights Division that would be the people bringing charges, and it's ridiculous.
It
So,
It really is, but it's even then, even if you didn't have them, you'd have that manifestation. What I see when you got Francesca Albanese coming out, and saying, "Oh, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist." Um,
right, that's
I I can't divorce it from, and it goes back to the Rhineland massacres. I can't
hmm
divorce it from European anti-Semitism has remained a constant. We had an 80-year, and I would even call it an 80-year law. I think the Munich Olympics exposed just how sympathetic people are to everything but dead Jews in
yeah,
1972. We had maybe a 30-year lull in European anti-Semitism before it kicked right back out again. And
hmm
it's a constant. It's a constant for almost 2000 years. And it's not Christian anti-Semitism. It's not anything but European anti-Semitism. And the Foxes are running the hen house.
yeah.
Anything with
Well,
involving the UN or the Hague or the ICJ.
so like, and here's a great example of some of some of that same speech, right? So, political party just recently announced in the UK. What is it? Restore Britain,
Yeah.
right? And if you listen to, while many people would be like, "Oh yeah, this sounds amazing," when you listen to the speeches that are coming out and saying like, "This is what we're going to do," uh, the let's put it this way: if I were to summarize some of that, is we're not saying that you're unwelcome. We're just saying that you're unwelcome here.
It's the
Like,
horseshoe theory. It's the
yeah.
it's they'll find common cause somewhere, and it almost always tends to be hatred of other groups.
Yes.
And this is where like Elon Musk comes in with that the right wing side of the horseshoe, and he's supporting it. And the polemic is no better than what you hear from like the people that support the left wing MPs over there
Hmm.
and such. It's a So yeah, and it all traces back. It all traces back to this medieval period and the groundwork that was laid. Their arguments are the same as they were in the Rhineland. The arguments are the same as the Germans used in the Holocaust because they have a rich. They've made they've it's fertile ground for exactly what they
Hmm.
do. And so I don't, and I don't think that I don't think that the Gazans I don't think the people in the West Bank are treated very well, but there are political solutions to those problems, and they're hampered. Nothing gets the kinds of governments like Netanyahu elected in Israel more than making Israel feel defensive about uh, because of with against false accusations. The, there's plenty of criticism to be levied, but they could do it in a way that doesn't use falsehood, things we're very familiar with for the last 2000 years. And
Hmm.
they get a lot further by treating us like any other state, and they don't. They do not. Um, and I say us, I get a lot of hate mail for being out there an open Zionist.
Hmm.
I I don't even qualify anymore that I'm a left-wing Zionist, because it just left-wing, right-wing, it doesn't matter to me. It's I see the writing on the wall at times. When I see American Christians like in the Methodist Church supporting BDS, they're following the European anti-Semitic playbook as well.
Yeah.
And and my rabbi has some great arguments about it from the congregationalist New England congregationalist bent, that they've always been anti-Semitic, and or at least anti-Judaic anyway. And I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't have that feeling, because I think there's a disconnect between the laity and the clergy on that in some regards too. But that's uh, well, I so question two though, like
Yeah.
I don't know what get the Jews, we unlike before, we talked about some of the passages in the Talmud, but there was anti-Christian polemic that came from Jews as well. And we gloss over it because, like, we were persecuted, blah blah blah, but we still wrote some pretty, like, critical stuff during the time period, because
Yeah.
when you're a downtrodden people, what do? You write a triumphalist vision of your future, prophetic triumphalist vision of your future, um, as one of catastrophic bloodletting for the Gentiles or their subjugation to Jewish rule. That was the fantasy. And there were Kabbalistic teachings that said Gentiles would be identified with the cosmic forces of evil, because Kabbalah really originated during this time period. Um, Rambam said, Maimonides, he said that Christianity was idolatry while Islam was not. And a lot of that has to do with the Trinity, and those kinds of things. But at the
Right.
same time, as we talked about in a previous episode, he did say that Christianity was fulfilling God's purpose and spreading the knowledge of God throughout the world. Um, and I wanted to take a different direction with this question, because we could beat the history to death. Um,
Hmm.
to modern Christians, if I were a Methodist, um, if I were a Baptist, and I can only ask you for the Methodist impression on this, but uh, you know, diversions, like permutations of Christianity, and I struggle to call it, because Latter-day Saints is so far afield, Seventh-day Adventists, do they still, to you, I know you can't speak on behalf of the church on this one, maybe you can, I don't know. Do they still spread the mission of Christ even if they do it imperfectly, or are they poison fruit? It's a loaded question.
Uh, I mean, huh. So as I've been, in various courses I've taken for seminary, there are certain faiths and that would identify as Christian but are not, that may have been mentioned recently in our conversation, that are actually viewed as cults. Say, for example, one of the discussions that we have, obviously, we have the sacrament of baptism, we have the sacrament of communion. We have two sacraments that we practice. Catholics have seven. Um, so, if someone were to come into the Methodist Church having been baptized elsewhere, um, depending on where they came from, we will either baptize them again or not. Um, from those faith traditions, no, we would baptize them. We would baptize them because they have not been baptized in the eyes of the church. Those are viewed as cults. They do not spread what we consider to be the gospel, because they are not teaching the truth of Christ, because of their interpretation of who Jesus is and was, um, is incorrect. They do not teach. Uh, well, yeah, not to get into like a whole rabbit trail of another, like, breaking down false theology, and I have to put it that way because um, when you start to divide I mean, when you divide the Trinity, you've walked away from Christian theology, and they do. So we have to be clear that yeah, as soon as you remove one piece of the Trinity from the Trinity, it's no longer Christian theology. So it becomes a cult. So yeah, outside of that, yeah, no, we do not recognize them as teaching the Christian tradition.
Makes for good
Um,
television if you have sister wives, though.
yeah, yeah, that's yeah. Outside of that, no. Inside like Baptists, yeah, I mean, yeah, we're good. Uh, we're pretty much on the same page in a lot of things. There's some great writings that John Wesley wrote about like some of his takedowns of epic takedowns of like John Calvin. And some of like the Calvinist doctrine that is problematic. But yeah, I mean that's getting into some of the nitty gritty there. I don't want to do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think about Weber every time I think about Calvin for some reason. I don't know why, but I and I know that was a loaded question and it's tough because the Latter-day Saints rubbed us the wrong way years and years ago with their posthumous baptism and their efforts to
Hmm.
baptize victims of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, then, you know, have you ever met a Mormon who is not like like a paragon of annoying virtue? I mean, I know this is really, really incendiary to say things like this. I'm not a South Park writer, and I don't want to poke fun at them, but I still, I just have never seen a group that that's really committed to spreading something that's such a load of crap. I don't know, but then being so good while they're doing it. I don't know. It makes
Well,
my
I mean,
teeth.
really, it goes to, I mean, it lives out the demonstration of one quote that is actually attributed to John Wesley, which is that the road to hell is paved with great intentions. So,
Yeah.
you can do everything with good at heart and still lead somebody the wrong way. And yeah, and I mean, to that end, I mean, like you were saying about like church power and whatnot, and the just the concept of like the idea of going back and posthumously baptizing people, and it's just so there's a I mention Romans 11 a lot when we're talking, and the
Yeah.
reason I do is because Paul writes very clearly in there that we as believers in Christ are not to have a position of arrogance towards Israel. We are not better than, we are not a replacement for, we are not a substitute for. Like that's not a thing. And
No.
to do that was just well, it was reprehensible. And like I mean, and not only that, unbiblical, shocking
So,
that somebody there would. No, I'm sorry. No, I don't want to get all like
no,
super
I
negative about
understand.
it, but yeah, keep it
Just
light,
just
right? Yeah, I can just
just
find
remember
a
the
hat.
just just remember the guy that was cosplaying a hobbit at the Smith farm who called people Gentiles. I'll just keep that mental
Hang
picture in
on.
your head.
I'm gonna go. I have this like hat back here. I can look in and get some ideas to come up, for nice things to say.
Uh,
But
the
anyway.
the the only thing that has ever worried me about the Latter-day Saints is like I think to any objective eye, people that aren't vulnerable or susceptible to joining, it's the cult practices. They bring you in because if you actually sat there and read the proof text, it would be like, oh no. Um,
Hmm.
but they do the people that they succeed in bringing into it that aren't multi-generational, that are new, truly new. They're looking for something that's empty in their lives and it's filled with this. The only thing that scares me is, you know, and I have a lot of doubts. I go through life with a lot of doubts. The history course we had on Judaism really planted a lot of seeds about the origin of Jewish monotheism and when it actually occurred and started historically, and it worried me because my whole faith construct has been around, you know, monotheism started with Abraham and Isaac and moved forward from there. And then here it is like, well, maybe it's more of a feature of the late kings. Ah, uh, so what scares me about the Latter-day Saints is like if people can believe that something that's so obviously full of it is true with such conviction and amass the numbers that they have, are, is that us? And like, is it
Are,
just
are we genuinely going after? Are we the baddies here? Or like, is that what
yeah?
we're doing?
Was
Well, are
Moses
we
a
the baddies?
was yeah? Was Moses Joseph Smith? Was he faking it? I mean, I don't think so, but I don't believe so. But it's yeah, yeah,
Well, I mean, I think the key difference there is that there is one of the key differences. Okay, there are many, many key differences.
yeah,
One of the primary being, I can go to a place and see these things. Like these places still physically exist.
yes, yeah.
So, like when we talk about Joseph, and by that I mean um, father of Manasseh, Joseph. So when we talk about Joseph and, of course, 12 brothers, Jacob, who becomes Israel, um, there is a tomb in Egypt. There is historical record that is being uncovered even now.
Yeah.
We have they found the physical evidence of the columns that were raised by Solomon on either side of the Red Sea. There's the physical evidence in the Sinai. Um,
I
there's
mean,
there's what is it? The Mount Ebal, the Mount of the Curse. They found the lead tablet that literally had the curse scribed on it in Proto-Hebrew. Just 2 years ago, they found that scroll um, on the top of Mount Ebal. Um,
yeah, aren't there some remnants too of they found
and
like
there's
some kind
altars
of
there.
yeah, I was going to say the altars in the two mountains, the one that was
Yes.
described at the end of Deuteronomy and took place at the beginning of Jacob, or not
Hmm.
Jacob, uh
Joshua.
Joshua. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I, I mean, never done
Yeah, they're
again.
physically there. Yeah.
Never,
They're
never.
physically there.
It's I mean, it's amazing.
So,
Like so, I mean,
yeah, I
and you
mean, now
can't.
go to Rochester and
Yeah, and
find me the
where's
hat,
right.
you
Well,
know,
and the Hill
find me the
Cumorah
plates.
and the Hill Cumorah is just thought to be the Hill Cumorah. It's like it could
Right.
be here, it could be the next ridge line over.
Now, what I can do is go to Rochester and find a bunch of newsprint articles in their historical record that are satirically written about one Joseph Smith as a shyster and a charlatan who would divine where riches were held hidden in his neighbor's fields for money. I can find that in the historical record. Um, you know, so what it comes down to is, I think what it really comes down to in terms of like all of the religious traditions is, are you able to break into the historical record? Are you able to find an archaeological record? Are you able to look at the religious texts and marry them up with things that actually happened and put them and tie them to specific places? And do they make sense? Is there a timeline that lines up? And really, when you look at Judaism and Christianity, the answer is yes. When you look at some of the splits off of Christianity, in terms like cultish splits off of Christianity, and a theory now, and there's even a theory now that Islam is actually a split off of Christianity.
That would make sense. It has so many elements that were, I mean, it's the youngest of the three Abrahamic faiths. It's
Yeah.
they definitely borrowed very liberally from Judaism, but probably the Jews of Saudi Arabia were very helpful
Hmm.
in that. And I forget what the names of the Jews were in that. Oh, I just studied it too, and it's like completely escaping me. This is short-term memory now, but the
Yeah. I mean, that's theory. It's not, proven, but
But
it's theory.
but
But and
we
it's based on. I mean, you look at the religious text. You look at the Quran. Jesus is mentioned 25 times.
yeah,
You know,
we
Muhammad's mentioned twice.
we intersect so many times,
Oh yeah, it's wild.
and I think it's also wonderful because we do have some synthesis in that, and that actually leads to
Yeah.
the next thing. Um, you know, we
Well, I'll tell you what.
I
Can I make this one point real quick?
yeah.
Just because it came to mind. It came to mind, and I'm like it. So, like, if we look at the texts and we look at the discussions and the writings of the contemporary, like historical contemporaries, what we see is that the polemic doesn't equal normative theology. And the other thing is that there's this immense intellectual overlap of the theology that's also historically real. And we have shared textual analysis and traditions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think makes this even stronger, despite all of the kerfuffle over the years. And I hate simplifying it down to such a silly word in that sense, because there's a lot of deep harm there.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but and then that does it an injustice. But despite all of the historical injustice, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
um, what we have is we're brothers separated by a common faith, and is probably the best way I can put it, um, because the heritage is there, the
Yeah.
history is there, the theology is there, and we're not so different,
No.
right? But you know what has happened is that we've allowed all the polemic to get in the way, and it's just like today.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's politics.
and there's so much potential still. Like once we get past all that, one of the things that I found interesting reading the book in preparation for this segment was that Jewish commentators at the time were very excited to copy Christian literary structures because in a lot of cases, some places they were employed to do the scribal
Oh, they were
work.
doing the scribe work, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
Jews,
that's actually where we think there's a copy that came. I don't know if I was telling you about it. There's a Hebrew copy of the Gospel of Matthew that was found in Spain. I believe 11th or 12th century. I have to look up the name of it. It actually has it's a known name, but it's considered to be a copy. But there's actually a chance because of how well it's written in terms of using Hebrew grammar and as well as turns of phrase like idioms, that it's actually was originally written in Hebrew. So like it may be a copy because carbon dating and whatnot, but there's a theory out there that it's actually a copy of an earlier Hebrew original text. So I mean that doesn't happen in a vacuum.
no.
Like yeah, that there's definitely been a strong historical link, and yeah, so 100%. Sorry,
Oh no, that's a good tangent.
I love
You know, the
archaeology and history and stuff, and it's like I'm nerding out right now. So
yeah, I feel that same
I
way. Like I pour over these texts, and with that, um, for me, like I just had a couple of semesters ago, we studied, we did close readings of the Torah with this great Professor Danny Mond, just a fantastic thing. And one of the things he talked about was the chiastic structures of our texts in our close reading. And one of the best sources for this, for me, uh, now this was a guy, Dr. David Dorsey, God rest his soul. He was the professor of Old Testament at the Evangelical Theological Seminary in Myerstown, Pennsylvania.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
close.
Now
I had,
Kairos University, I think, or something like that.
yeah. When one time, one of the chaplains from the guard took me down to meet Dr. Dorsey, and I had a copy of the literary structure of the Old Testament. I still have a copy of this. It's written in English and it uses the English for the things, but he does allude to the words. And if anybody is looking for the literary, like to understand the functional structure of Torah, not just the words and how they translate, but these thematic structures throughout the Torah. I mean, this guy, uh, Christian professors, and I say this because I just finally mastered the infinitive Hebrew infinitives last week. So like 30 years of reading Hebrew, and I'm like, I still have a long ways to go on a lot of the grammatical nuance, so to speak. This guy runs circles around it. And his other book, I have the other one, The Roads and Highways of Ancient Israel, really, but the latter really, really is interesting to me. And the idea that we can learn from each other in our relationships to these texts isn't new, but it extends back to these medieval times.
Hmm.
So this is another one of those questions where I don't want to ask so much about the material, but like as it informs us today, and you kind of already started touching on this, what are ways you feel that Christians and Jews in particular can learn from each other today?
Mm. I mean, from the Christian perspective, I would say if we absolutely should understand the faith from the Jewish perspective. We need to understand deeply that Jesus, before all other things, is Jewish. I mean, that's a core. And ironically, I mentioned that that resolution from the UMC from a few years ago, from 2016. That's actually one of the core statements in there. Jesus was a devout Jew, as were his first followers were devout Jews. We cannot approach the Christian faith without an understanding of the Jewish faith. Um, it's foundational. I mean, I can't understand. Well, let's put it this way: like when I'm talking to my church, um, I tell them ultimately, I want you to be able to witness to other people about Jesus Christ, right? In the early church, we didn't have the New Testament. None of that existed until late first, early second century. Um, it just didn't. It certainly wasn't formalized canon, made canon until well later than that. So what were they using? You know, what book were they using? Well, they were using the Old Testament. Like if you don't understand the Old Testament, if you don't understand our history, what it all means, why it's significant, um, you don't understand. You don't understand why it's necessary. And so there's that. Like if a Christian doesn't understand Judaism, well, one might say you don't actually understand Christianity.
Right.
So, um, there's going to be a lot of Christians who might hear that statement and go like, "What?" Uh, but it's truth. It's truth. You don't need to have the. Let's put it this way: you don't need to have like the full-on experience, right? You don't need to have necessarily all of the in-depth knowledge of, the law and all that, because Gentiles obviously existed and still exist. Um, but we need to understand why, and if we don't, that's not good. So I mean, the other thing is that there's a cooperative ethical engagement that has to happen between the two faiths.
Yeah.
The other thing I would tell a Christian is go go to Israel, because you aren't gonna. The other one is you're not really going to fully understand the value of Scripture, of any of this until you go see it.
Yeah.
Like
It's
until you
true.
walk the land, it doesn't click.
No, it really doesn't, because all of a sudden that experience, the experience, the pageantry of the Old Testament, probably the pageantry of the New Testament, it
Hmm.
doesn't really exist until you stand and see maybe the cave of the
Yeah.
patriarchs, or the Jordan
Well, yeah,
River.
and not the only place I didn't get. We didn't get to Hebron, which I would have loved to have gone. But
Yeah.
I mean, given the temperature there,
It
that's
could
not exactly one of the safest places to go.
it could be
Um,
fraught. It could be really fraught.
yeah, I would have
I
loved to have gone, uh, but yeah, like even just getting to uh, like the city of David
yeah.
and being able to see um, some of the historical sites there.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be going back
Nice.
within the next couple of years. Iris and I have every intention of going back.
Oh, Iris is
Now
going to go this time too.
she's going to go this time too. I hope. I hope. I hope. Um, but like I'm excited because I mean they've uncovered the pool of Siloam. Hezekiah's I think Hezekiah's Dam, as well as now as part of that, the Pilgrim Road that goes from the pool to the southwestern wall of the temple. Um, and it's now walkable. You can go the whole way from the pool up to the Temple Mount. Um, so I mean, there's just so much more to see every time. And so, like, this is the thing. We got to get there. And then from the other perspective, um, I would love for the polemics to step out of the way for a second and people to say, you know what? I don't want to listen to all the rhetoric for a minute. And I want someone to actually hear when I say, well, it's so easy for a Christian to offend someone who is Jewish because it's so easy for us to say something like, uh, well, like I was just teaching this past Sunday on the Transfiguration, and it's a huge moment. And it was bigger than I realized because, you know, I'm teaching about this moment and they're on the mountain and Moses and Elijah appear. And I realize what is happening. And it just Jesus is standing there with the embodiment of the law and the embodiment of the prophets.
That's, I think on the reverse of this, it would be really helpful for Jews to learn from Christians what I think there's this, automatically there's suspicion. If a Christian wants to talk to you about their faith, you know,
Yeah,
they're usually trying to sell you something.
right.
But but
Well,
but at
I
the
mean, I
same
work in
time,
marketing.
I think yeah, at the same time, I think it's really important because I we I should to give this some context here in Maine, very recently, the Jewish community statewide rallied and we defeated a BDS style piece of
Good.
legislation
I'm
in
glad to hear
committee.
that.
It was really good, but we were
Uh,
joined by a an alliance of Christians, churches, clergy, and they weren't motivated by. What people make the assumption that there's eschatological implications to Jewish support for Israel or Jews.
mhm.
That that it's the ingathering of exiles. It's the whooshed away. All the Jews have to go to Jerusalem for Jesus to come back, kind of thing.
Right.
And but that neglects to mention that I think that's really reductionist to think that
Yes.
Christians support us for just those reasons.
Hmm.
And even if they might believe that, they probably have more material. Israel is an ally that shares our values. We we are nervous about Muslim control of the Holy Land. Um, there are a lot of different things in play. It's probably as complex as anything else, and I think, but
Well, I
beyond
mean,
that,
there are going to be Christians out there that, and there are. I have met Christians out there who are that simplified in their understanding of, uh, I mean, it is that simple for some.
yeah,
And those are the ones that I love to be able to say, like, tell you what, let's have a chat. Let's talk about more than just this very simple idea, this simplistic idea that like we somehow just need to get all the Jews to Israel and everything will happen. Like,
yeah.
no, that's so not the case. Um,
We, I have a little, as an aside, we had a guy, a Philo Semite, that just would not go away for our congregation, but he was handsy with the ladies. So we finally had to,
oh,
he was a Southern Baptist, just Southern gentleman, beautiful singing voice, but he would come up and just like never leave. And he had this plan that if stuff went sideways in the United States, he was going to build us a boat on the Penobscot River and sail the Jews of Bangor, Maine to Israel on a boat that he built in the Penobscot River. And I kid you not, like I I
okay.
I appreciate the sentiment on one hand. On the other hand, let's uh let's do this in a little
let's
less let's be less
let's
crazy.
let's table that. Let's
I
yeah,
would
like we'll revisit that later.
Actually, at Avi's bat mitzvah, he gave mom one of his ministry cards, and mom was so put off by this. I am at a bat mitzvah for my granddaughter, and you are.
I
uh,
could see that. I could see that. Yeah, she would be. Yeah. All right. I'm glad
yeah,
she kind of got angry about that.
she
But
did.
yeah,
She
no.
was,
Yeah, I would love for Jews to know that Christians aren't always trying to sell them something.
yeah,
That 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 there is a um, genuine love, like
yeah,
of like I don't know how to put it without it sounding corny. Um, but like there is just it's like long lost family almost in a sense of like that we should be closer than we are, and that we should be better connected than we are, and
yeah,
that all of these things that happened in the past, because we have to recognize that like the church, like both Catholic and Protestant churches did participated in persecution, and the resulting separation feeds into that distrust,
yeah,
and rightly so. They at the same time, so the Christians need to get it in terms of understanding the actual, at least understanding the core of the faith. And I would love then, I think once more Christians understand it, it'll be a lot easier for more Jews to see the genuine heart, because a Christian who understands who Jesus is isn't going to be somebody who's like uh, hardcore sell like this is yeah.
yeah.
It's so hard to put into words.
We're also like at the top of the afterlife bonus point program for getting converts out of. Like, I think it is like next impossible to convert a Jew. So it's like, you know, it's so it's like I don't, and I never fault anyone for trying. When somebody like rolls up their sleeves, and I'm like, all right, maybe
Here we
you'll be the
go.
one. 30 years, maybe you're the guy. My br- my brother and my dad, they don't even try, but you're gonna be the one. You're gonna be the one. And
Oh man.
if you do try, it's by you guys both lead these what I consider very virtuous examples of living. You're both fantastic fathers. You're wonderful husbands, and that's if
Well,
anything
thanks,
was going to
man.
sell me, it would just be on the way you guys lead your lives, and
Well, I mean, I heard it said just recently, right, that there's four gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. There's actually five gospels, and there's the one that a lot of people may not read the first four, but they'll read the fifth one, and the fifth one is you.
yeah,
And and if they're not going to read the other four, they're going to read the fifth one. They're going to see how you behave, how you act, how you interact with other people. To others, and I'm stealing that from somebody else. The way I teach my congregation about that is I talk about there's a silent testimony that we give, and it's the one that is how we interact with other people. If we're, and that comes back to the greatest commandment. A lot of people love to just cite that and try and pretend like that's some kind of, just by being able to cite it, that it's magic words. No, you've got to be able to actually live it. And by living it, it's that.
yeah.
And so thanks, man. And likewise,
Well,
and
that greatest commandment. That's the one that we probably have the most in common, in that
mhm.
we have the what's hateful to yourself don't do to your neighbor, and yours takes the more positive approach, but love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
I think these are, that's where we have so much overlap. One of the I kind of, I know we're coming close on time here, but I wanted to take a different tack on the Inquisition as well, because obviously you can't get
Okay.
through the medieval period without getting in the Inquisition.
Yeah, you
I
really
I
can't.
I don't know why it's in my mind right now. I don't know what recently came up, but I was thinking about Puerto Rico.
Okay.
and I have to be honest, my Spanish is probably not as good as yours, and we'll get into that, but I enjoyed the halftime show for a couple different reasons. um But like the Puerto Rican thing was big because the Inquisition's roots are pretty. Puerto Rico wouldn't exist without the Inquisition. And
Correct.
this is one of those things where I Jewish immigration to Puerto Rico began with the arrival of conversos. These were, if our listeners don't know, these were Jews who were forced to convert to Catholicism, and a lot of them accompanied Christopher Columbus on his second voyage.
Hmm.
Because the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492, leading to a lot of the Jews ran to the mountainous parts of the island where they continued to practice crypto Judaism. My second daughter, Avi, is descended from Puerto Rican and Cuban conversos.
Hmm.
The mezuzah and the Virgin Mary's foot kind of thing, and I don't know if your wife, who is also Puerto Rican, has any conversos background, but
Yeah,
it's
we there's a strong suspicion that on her mother's side.
so I mean
Yeah.
it's there. I mean, like it's different. Like for you and I, descended from Lithuanian and Jews from Belarus and Russia. Uh, the Inquisition didn't touch us, but
Right.
our kids, our former girlfriends, ex slash your wife, we
Yeah.
we're close with people that had to adopt Catholicism to avoid autumn
Hmm.
de fe, like in their history, and that being burned at the stake and such.
Yeah.
I so I watched the halftime show, and I didn't I you know I'm derisive of a lot of the hate towards it. If Kid Rock's your thing, watch Kid Rock. If they have, I haven't liked halftime shows since 2007 with Prince. I mean, Prince playing Purple Rain and the Purple Rain, it it ruined me for all other
Yes.
halftime shows. But
Yeah.
but
I'm actually with you on that one. 100%.
but I was still moved because I was like, I love Puerto Rico. I really would love to. My Avi has probably will inherit property in Rincon, uh,
Okay.
and I would love to buy a place there. I know you spend a lot of time there. Um,
Yeah.
it,
I'm
it
not allowed to buy land there. She
oh
won't let me.
no, oh
No.
no, uh, but
I'm not allowed.
it's
She
so
doesn't want to live
beautiful.
there.
Oh gosh, and I can understand why. I mean, the people are so
Yeah.
kind, but poverty is
Oh
so
yeah.
rampant. And that's what I enjoyed about that halftime show. But I was thinking you can't think about Puerto Rico as a Jew and not think about the Inquisition, and
Hmm.
then how many of my peers in the Army National Guard that I served with from Puerto Rico had. I have two people that I know right now. One of whom is discovered that she has Jewish ancestry and is converting to Judaism. And then this other guy, we were doing the weigh-ins at the guard, and he's from Puerto Rico, and he's wearing a Star of David. I'm like,
All right.
what? He's not going to get Landsman, if I throw out
Right.
my R's, like do a Gene Wilder style Landsman,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's not their thing. But I I don't know. I just I know I just like seeing it affirmed that it was a part of our country, but it's also part of it's part of the Jewish story too.
Yeah.
Um,
And what's interesting is that it doesn't, I will say this, so like having visited there is I don't know if it's like the Museum of the Inquisition, if they would call it that, or a museum of it's in Arecibo. There's a museum there that you can learn about the arrival of the conquistadors and like, how they, you know, took over the island and all of that. I don't think they got into that too much. Um, but there's some of that history's there, not even that in depth. Uh, but you definitely get there's definitely some of that there. Uh, but I mean, you know, it's interesting to see that because like my wife's family. I mean, they 100% on her mother's side. There's a strong suspicion that on her mother's side they were because they're from sort of central of the island, definitely up in the mountains, as it were. Um, so it's entirely possible. Like if you were to look on a map, like like Utuado area. There's like kind of central west of center on the island where they're from, and it would entirely fit because, like, while San Juan was the major port, uh, there are other areas where they landed, and Arecibo was one of them. Um, and I mean, let's put it this way: Barceloneta did not get its name in a vacuum, and it's
No.
right there, and it's like the small town like right next to Arecibo. So like there's and it's just north of where Iris's family uh lives. So it's entirely possible. And it's like how often do you meet that many blonde, blue-eyed Puerto Ricans
Well,
that have incredibly light skin. Uh
I've my daughter's one of those.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Like it's
uh,
you don't and I mean, from the middle of the island. You just don't it's like, okay, well, that came from somewhere,
yeah.
you know?
My
So
my
yeah.
it was it's funny. My daughter's great grandmother, her abuelita, passed away recently, and I think she was either 100 or very close to 100. Uh,
Wow, yeah.
and I and I think she was the last generation that was actually born in Puerto Rico. Um, I don't know. It's funny thinking about the Spanish Inquisition. It may sound really dumb to say you couldn't, and I know that Bad Bunny, the guy, he's, I think he's Catholic or lapsed Catholic. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's the most common faith in Puerto Rico. Is if you're like I would say like sect of Christianity, Catholic is the most common. Like you can't swing a dead cat there without hitting a Catholic church.
which is
So
and it's still beautiful because
just like honestly, it's just like Brazil. I mean, like when I was
yeah,
there, Catholic
it's
churches everywhere.
it's Latin America across the board.
Yeah.
It's and people are so religious. They go and
Hmm.
which as people that struggle with getting, butts and seats in our churches and synagogues, it's like, what's your magic sauce? Is it crushing poverty? Is it crushing poverty? Because we can do crushing poverty. We're just a couple tariffs away from that. So,
True.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I no, I really I liked. I was thinking about the halftime show in retrospect, not thinking it so much in terms of like what version of America that we are, but that
Yeah.
Bad Bunny wouldn't have
Honestly,
been on that. It's
and
it's
from an opinion standpoint, neither of them got it right.
yeah,
I just don't. Well, and I mean that from a faith perspective.
yeah.
Like if
But
somebody's approaching this from a faith perspective, I'd be like, well, I mean, I'm hard pressed to find it in either, and both would say, oh, family values and this and that about both shows, and I'm like, yeah, no, I hate to tell you, no, because when you got one guy singing about, comes out, opens his set, and by this I'm talking about Kid Rock,
no,
opens his set, singing about singing a song that he wrote, and it's about doing things to very underage girls. Uh, I kind of take I have a problem with that. And then to go on and then attempt to glorify God and issues. I have issues with that. And yes, somebody might say, "Oh, well, but he was talking about all the changes in his life as a result of it." And I'm like,
yeah. I
you
don't
can
like.
talk about that without glorifying your past. I was not born in the pulpit. Like, but when I get up and I talk to my people on a Sunday morning, I'm not glorifying all of my sins of old and then
Yeah,
telling them about the great things that God has done. So the approach, not great. May have been great, well intended, not great. Same goes for the halftime show. Well intended, having a bunch of people kind of like dry hump in the air might not have been the best approach,
you
you
know,
know? But hey,
you
But
know, I
overall, though, I mean, I loved it from, this is going to sound wrong saying, given that I just said that, the visual perspective
yeah,
of the cane fields and the
yes,
the the town and like I mean,
the
that had the vibe of every time I have been there. Yes.
My daughter had to
And
explain to me the power line thing, and I was like,
oh yeah,
"Oh, I
yeah,
get it." Well, man, I just thought it was really I learned, I like anything that I get to learn from, and
yeah.
that's, I mean,
There was a
it
lot of
just
history there in that, and it's like it just wasn't communicated well. So it's like well intended, but like you have to go digging for the
I
you have to
I
go
do
digging for like what was supposed to be good out of it, and then you're like, oh yeah, that was actually cool.
I
But
do
the, you
like
know,
one thing that really I do like the notion as a hemisphere that we're all in it together, because
yeah,
fr from tip to tip, this entire hemisphere was founded as a rectification of Europe's mistakes. And from
yeah,
and we repeated a lot of them, like with what we did to, we talk about the Jews in Puerto Rico. Well, the indigenous people that lived there weren't too happy about being landed on, but
yeah,
still, from I mean, it was an attempt to correct Europe's mistakes, and we
hmm
are still correcting Europe's mistakes. So I did like the notion that we're all in it together, and one of Europe's biggest mistakes was the Inquisition. And uh so we wouldn't have had Bad Bunny without the Inquisition. So, in a manner of speaking,
yeah. True, true.
uh,
And
I,
I mean, like, and like, no single tradition has like a monopoly on coercion, you know?
yeah. Well, I
And
guess that would be the last question I would ask you tonight. And I think this is, the Inquisition especially is a good thing for it. The Methodism obviously originated much later. It
mhm.
might have its roots in the Anglican Church, but um, how do you think Protestant traditions, but more especially Methodism, learned from the abuses of power that we associate with the Spanish Inquisition, and what part of that do you think manifests today? In I mean, you that I looked it up while we were talking, the statement. I got the guiding principles for Christian Jewish relations, and I
Mhm.
looked it up. Oh my God, I get a little verklempt. Uh,
Right?
it's
It's
quite
beautiful.
is that, would you consider one of those things like a lesson of the Inquisition, or I mean, maybe it's more recent, like the Holocaust, but um
I mean, I would say like it's a little bit of both. I would say like because I mean this and I say that because I mean our roots go back to the Anglican roots. So like our articles of religion and the founding documents of the church. So I mean our 25 articles of religion are borrowed directly from the Anglican tradition. So like that there's a heritage there. So our belief that our takeaway from that tradition was one that says that like grace is so much more important. Um, Having a conscience is so much more important. That doing things voluntarily is so much more important. um, that it be a voluntary faith, that it's one that's filled that shares grace, and then and has a conscience, and those are things that have been absent from the traditions in the past. And it's certainly one that, and it's not an aspersion that I want to cast at the Catholic Church of today necessarily, but of say 500 years ago, one might say that they didn't really have a conscience. It was our way or, well, yeah,
or here's a nice stick with some firewood around it,
yeah, it was our way or, yeah, you have chosen the way of pain. Sorry, that was, uh, sorry,
it's
nerd.
ve- it's very true though. Yeah, no, I do you I guess it's probably a question for another thing, but I mean, it's worth asking. um do you think, if somebody, and I say the same thing about my own branch of Judaism, I am a very committed observe, which is really rare. I mean, there are a lot of people that go to a conservative synagogue, but you know that I'm sure you have the same thing, like Methodists that go to church on Sunday, but Judaism exists within the framework of, while I'm present at synagogue. Uh,
Right.
I lead an observantly Jewish life. As you see, I wear my kippah all the time. I wear a tzitzit, my prayer
Yeah.
shawl, and I keep the mitzvot. I keep kosher in my home. I lay tefillin every day but Shabbos and Yontif, and you know, it, obviously I want to teach Judaism. I want to live Judaism as a rabbi. But that is really unusual in the conservative movement. And I, now we've been proclaiming the conservative movement in danger of being dead for 40 years. But, at some point, when you hollow out enough synagogues and they've enough, we dropped from 592 congregations to 400. Um, I do you think, I don't think, a lot of us don't believe conservative Judaism really has a future right now. Um,
Hmm.
do you think Methodism, has a future? Is there a schism in your near future? Is it in 20 years time
Ooh.
will it look totally different?
Well, I mean, the
And
schism's already happened.
yeah,
Um, yeah, the schism's already happened. I mean, we're in mid schism right now. Um, to just be frank about that, we're in the dead middle of a massive schism in the church. And a lot of that is over conservative versus progressive views in terms of the faith. Um, and I would go more orthodox versus progressive in terms of scripture rather than using the term conservative. Conservative conveys politics, and it's not a political thing.
yeah, that's why I hate
Um,
our name too, because everybody's like, well,
yeah,
we're actually, we're pretty progressive,
yeah,
like religiously, so it's like conservative is like the worst name to have.
right. I'm not gonna lie. Like when you said that, I was like, just like on the inside a little. But the no, I mean, we're mid schism. I would say that yes, there is a future for Methodism. Um, but honestly, at the end of the day, I'm less concerned about denominations than I am about making sure that people are in the faith.
I'll drink to
Um,
that. I'll drink to
you
that.
know,
Like
like
literally.
yeah. I mean, I'm not super worried at the end of the day about I, right. I
Well,
mean,
because
theologically, I very heartily align with the teachings and writings of John Wesley. Um, I would see myself proceeding forward in a Wesleyan tradition
you could do that out of the back of a
theologically.
car if you had to. I bet you could.
Well, and I mean, on the back of a horse. That I mean, and that's kind of how the Methodist Church was born,
Circuit
on the
riders and
back of a
whatnot.
horse. Yeah, with the circuit
I
riders.
remember
So I mean,
that.
yeah, and we've joked about where we would plant new churches as a result of the schisms that are happening, and I'm like, well, it wouldn't be the first time that the Methodist Church was founded in a barn. Like it's you meet where you meet.
Yeah.
The tradition is only as strong as the people who are willing to keep it. Um, and so I'm more concerned then about teaching the tenets of the faith, rather than teaching a tradition.
Are we
Um,
are we headed towards I mean, just like we have the same dynamic. Are you guys headed towards a post-denominational world? My ordination will be post-denominational. I'm not going to be affiliated with a movement. Uh, do you see yourself in a post-denominational Christian world in the future?
I mean,
Um,
I certainly could. Um, I could see that. It was certainly something I've considered in the last couple of years with everything that's gone on inside the denomination. I mean, I've got my eyes on like the future now in terms of like where things are going and like where, I feel like I absolutely have some decisions I have to make in the next year, with how things are shifting. And it's happening rapidly. Um, because I'm watching things that are happening in other denominations where they've already gone through this process, that the Methodist denomination is going through now. And they're descending more and more into chaos. And the chaos that they are descending into is one that seeks to, uh, I mean, they're devouring themselves. They're doing things like passing rules that basically say like, well, if you don't willingly uh, submit to doing these things and taking these actions, then we're going to pull your credentials. You'll no longer be a pastor or a church within this denomination. And like, it's at the end of the, it's funny. I
It's the
see that and I go
Inquisition.
like,
It's the
yeah, in a
Inquisition.
way, in a way, it is. It's not, it's not, torture and stakes, but like, it's in a way, it's very similar because now it's like, now they're effing with somebody's livelihood.
Yeah.
In a sense, like they're threatening people's pensions, they're threatening people's livelihoods, and while on the global scale and on like the scale of like persecution across the planet, that's really like nothing. Um, in terms of like what's happening in Nigeria right now, in terms of like the Muslim persecution of the church in Nigeria, where like they're rounding up Christians wholesale and just slaughtering them.
Yeah.
Like though it's wild, but at the same time, like this is what's happening here, and like persecution is different everywhere. Like we're going to see this happening everywhere. Neither here nor there, though. To that statement, I mean, I'm looking at this and going, yeah, even if we go post-denominational, like even if we go outside of a fixed denomination, we're still gonna face challenges.
Yeah.
And but ultimately, what is important at the end of the day isn't um, am I following all these rules? Am I teaching from this? Like, am I checking all these theological boxes based on what this person's beliefs were from, 300 years ago? And that's not to say that he was wrong or right. He and I disagree on a lot of stuff, specifically like the concept of infant baptism. I have a real issue with that.
Yeah.
One of his primary justifications for his take on infant baptism was the false comparison to the covenant of circumcision, and having that covenant mark being the same somehow as the mark of baptism. And I'm like, hardly. That was an eternal covenant established by God. That is not nearly the same um, as the outward symbol of baptism. Um, that's very poor comparison, sir. Like we don't see eye to eye on that. So, you know, post like outside of a denomination, I mean, really all a denomination is a bunch of people who get together and say, you know what, we're going to agree to these rules and these beliefs and say that we're going to teach inside this system.
Yeah.
And it gives us the power of collective bargaining for and advantages that way. That's really it. At the end of the day, a denomination is nothing more than we make it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change, ultimately, it doesn't change the faith. When the denomination begins to change the faith, you got a problem. The,
Yeah.
the, the
And
faith should power the denomination. And then that's the shift that I've seen in the Methodist churches, the new denomination, the new Methodist denomination that's forming Global Methodist Church. The faith is powering that denomination, at least at this moment. The faith seems to be powering the denomination. They are really being driven by scripture, from what I've seen. So the traditions and things that they're putting in place, the rules that they're putting in place, the doctrines that they're putting in place are all very much, it's all very much scripturally focused.
ah,
Where Methodist, United Methodist is now all very driven by politics and global political climate, populist movement. Um, what's going to get us the most brownie points with everybody and make us look good so that people will like us, seems to be the primary concern.
you know, my theory on this is an army sergeant is it's better to be feared than loved. But yeah, I kid.
Hence
Um,
Spanish Inquisition.
right. No, the it's tough. Our denomination works a little bit differently, whereas like it's voluntary for us as a congregation to be a part of it. We own the building, we own our Jewish future, but we submit ourselves to the authority of the conservative movement and its rabbinical arm, the rabbinical assembly, by becoming members of this synagogue group, and we pay yearly dues for it.
Mhm.
And as my rabbi likes to say, we could burn that money for warmth in a Maine winter and we'd get more use out of it. And so
That's, that's very similar to the Christian denominations. I'm not gonna lie.
and I for it's branding. We get to put the logo, and it's a
Yep.
shorthand for like I'm going to be able to come to this service. I'll be able to sit with my wife, but still hear traditional liturgy, and that's
Hmm.
generally what that means. And I don't because I don't think people are thinking too hard about the denominations when they're shopping for a place to sit on Sunday or Saturday. I think they're
Yeah.
looking for, does this place meet me where I live? And is it talking to me about finding joy in my Christian or Jewish life?
Mm.
And
That
and
raises an interesting question, because one of the things that I've seen uh, more and more in people who are coming to visit the church is people who are looking for, um, well, they're not looking for the comfort of, I mean, I have those, right? I have the people that come because they were like raised in the tradition and they want they're looking for that. I know that inside this service order, like I got the book of worship back here, and like we have our service orders that we follow, you know, so many hymns and these prayers here, and it's very, it's not as bad as like, and when I say bad, I'm not like implying, but yeah,
it's the same
yeah,
thing every week.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you go to the Catholic Church, and it's literally the same thing every week, every year. That like the 13th week of the year every year is every 3 years because of the lectionary. Um, that every third year on the X week of whatever season you're in of the church, uh, it is these scriptures and these are the hymns and these are the readings, and that's very much the Catholic thing.
They got us. They got that from us.
Yeah, we're not too honestly, we're not too far from that ourselves. Um, because you could go to 10 Methodist churches on a Sunday and hear roughly the same message in the exact same sermon, and the exact same, sing mostly the same hymns, hear the same scriptures read. Uh, it's a thing. You'll even hear a lot of the same prayers, because, we work from the similar resources. That said, um, we have had people come who are looking for more.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean like they're looking because they're feeling drawn to certain, like they're feeling certain needs or certain forms of emptiness in their life, and they're looking to see where they might be able to find answers to questions that they've got, or you know like I had a family visit and they were looking for a place where they really felt like they needed to learn how to love God, and they were looking for a church that could teach them that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and
It's
and, and ironically, the way that I have found that you love God is by doing the things that God would have you do. And you start to understand all the meaning behind it and why and how as a result of actually getting involved. And that wasn't good enough. And I'm okay with that. Like people can come and go,
yeah.
but I've seen people come and go for various reasons.
Yeah.
One was because I wasn't political enough.
Yeah. We get that. There's no Goldilocks zone with any of this. There's
Yeah.
no place where the porridge is just right.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, this isn't the
there's
Church of America. I'm not going to be like, you stand up and you try and take over my service on a Sunday morning with like on the 4th of July because with some patriotic diatribe. I hate to tell you, I'm not here to worship America,
no. We
you
sing
know?
we sing in between the Torah service. We sing America the Beautiful because we like that better than Star Spangled Banner. It's just it's appropriate theme for the if you love this country, but you love it because it's a blessed land. Uh, and then we sing Hatikva, of course, because we're a Zionist congregation. But the what I'd say, it's the same thing. The very similar story I had is we had a young lady. I don't know if she was young. She was probably a little bit younger than us. She came to, and we're not young anymore, I guess. So um, she came to our Yom Kippur service, and sitting in the back, she had a Celtic cross tattooed on her neck, and I was like, Okay, we're not here to judge. We're here to have people in and hope for the best. And she, she was clearly searching for something, and she started off the service, and I was a little worried because security at Tree of Life, all this October 7th, we're
Oh
always on
yeah.
pins and needles. And she says to me, um, "What's the Jewish take on exorcising demons?" And and I'm like, okay, this is going to be one of those. But I said, I told her the truth that, like, there was there's some like old, medieval stuff on exorcism and Judaism, but we don't really have an ongoing practice of exorcising demons, especially not at a conservative synagogue in Bangor, Maine. We don't have Father Marin, and
Call Russell Crowe.
yeah, so we,
Sorry.
but she sat respectfully through the service, and I could tell it was something that was new to her and she was learning. And at the end of it, I followed up with her. I didn't I she told me her name, but I don't remember it. And she's never been back since, but I think that she got something out of it. Whatever she needed, she got that day.
Hmm.
And while I want members, I want long-term members, I want people that build a relationship with the community. I'm
Yeah.
also, as a Jew and an aspiring theologian, I'm very content with, just if I can only meet that one need, for that one temporal need, let it be enough to sustain somebody. And I'll never know if the work that we do fixes anything for anybody, but at least for that moment, there's something. And yeah, that's all we ever can do, I guess, is hope for the
Yeah.
best.